Welcome everyone to this webinar on the Practitioner's Guide for Community Lending for a Just and Equitable Energy Transition. My name is Hannah Vargason. I'm with the Center for Impact Finance at the University of New Hampshire, specifically the Carsey School of Public Policy there at UNH. So I will be moderating today's discussion. I'm an author on the guide, but I'm also joined by my co-authors and several panelists. So I'll introduce you to them as we go over the agenda here in a moment. I want to direct you to the link on the screen, a short link for the guide if you haven't already accessed it, and I believe my colleague Tina is going to drop that in the chat for us. And we'll go over our agenda for the day. So we're going to start with some opening comments from Kelly Fisher here in a moment. She'll kick things off as head of corporate sustainability for HSBC, which is a leader in the banking industry on climate and energy lending. And HSBC provided the support for the production of this report. And then my co-authors and I will provide a brief overview of the guide. So Tina Poole-Johnson is my colleague at the Center for Impact Finance as our Deputy Director and Senior Fellow. And Curtis Probst is CEO of the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation, or NYSEC. And NYSEC is the nation's oldest local green bank, and they finance a wide range of energy efficiency and clean energy technologies. Notably, 84% of their projects are in or supporting LMI communities. So together, the three of us authored this guide, this report. After we go through a quick overview, we'll hear responses on the guide and insights from other leaders in the community development finance field. So we're joined by first Amir Kirkwood, who is president and CEO of Locus, which is a national community development organization that includes a CDFI bank, impact loan fund, and a guarantee pool, big overachievers. And also Neda Arab Shahi, who is senior vice president of the Center for Resiliency and Clean Energy at Inclusive. Inclusive is a membership organization and intermediary for the Community Development Credit Union network, and is a partner to the center in many of our trainings that we offer. And I believe one of my colleagues will also link in the chat to those training offerings. Finally, last but not least, Emily Robichaux, Senior Vice President of Climate and Energy Programs at Opportunity Finance Network. This probably goes without saying, but OFN is the leading network and intermediary for CDFIs of all types. And notably, their CEO is on record for saying that climate justice is a core purpose for CDFIs. So after we hear from those folks, we will have some discussion and also take your questions. So I'd like to encourage you to go ahead and chat your questions as they come to you so we can keep a running record and curate that. But there is the opportunity to go off of mute and ask your question directly. We can use raised hands. But here is your friendly reminder to stay muted unless you are speaking. So one more piece of housekeeping. We are recording today, and we will post the recording to our website and also share it out with the registration list. I also want to let you know that directly following this webinar at 2 p.m. Eastern is another webinar hosted by RMI and the Justice Climate Fund on how community lenders, green banks, and other financial organizations can leverage the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, or GGRF, leverage those awards to fill financing gaps in home and vehicle decarbonization. So you can still register for that event and or find the recording at the link that I will drop in the chat now. So it's a nice companion piece to this event. So today, we are certainly going to address the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, but our discussion is really about an entree into the clean energy and climate finance space. So you can expect a sweeping overview of the need and opportunity and infrastructure for community development lenders to finance climate change, from solutions, from mitigation to adaptation to resilience, and ultimately environmental justice. And the Practitioner's Guide and this webinar are really a pitch to you community lenders to get active in the space and also collaborate with each other as well as green banks to take on new projects. That said, it is your existing relationships and your current approach to underwriting that are assets in developing project pipeline, in assessing and mitigating risk, and ultimately delivering that responsible capital to the communities that we already work in. Those communities that are also disproportionately impacted by climate change. On the flip side of the coin, those communities will likewise experience significant and varied co-benefits from those investments in climate solutions. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to do some additional framing of our discussion today. Kelly?
Sure. Thank you so much, Hannah. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And as Hannah said, I'm Kelly Fisher. I'm the head of corporate sustainability for HSBC here in the US. We are one of the world's biggest global banks. And I'll just talk to you a little bit about why we sponsored this. But first, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank the Carsey School and the New York City Energy Efficiency Corp. It's actually the second report that we've done with Curtis at NYSEG. And really, really important to us that we're always advancing the thought leadership that the world needs. And I want to thank all of you for being here. Because if you're here, it means you're thinking about the incredible intersection between environmental and sustainability and social impact. So we're really appreciative of you for coming here today and taking the time. So HSBC has been on our climate journey for quite a long time, but we finally issued in January of this year our comprehensive net zero transition plan. It's 103 pages long. If you'd like to read it, you can find it online. And it's comprehensive and long because we believe that this topic is so critical. It is a key component of the bank's global strategy. It is something that Noel Quinn, our global CEO, talks about all the time as being one of our key priorities. But it's not going to be easy. Through research done by others that we've examined, there's an estimated $155 trillion needed to get to a 1.5 degree pathway. And about 40 billion of that, 40 trillion of that actually is going to be required by the year 2030. So we can't be complacent. If climate change is one of the biggest threats, the biggest threat to humanity, and I think most of us by being here believe that it is, we can't be complacent. We have to take action. So the bank uses that report to outline how we plan to get there. And some of the things that we outlined in that include that we've made our own $1 trillion commitment to deploy 1 trillion upwards of to $1 trillion in sustainable finance by the year 2030. We've already deployed about 210 billion of that. And it's everything you can imagine: green bonds, social loans, green loans, sustainability linked products. We're the world's biggest trade bank, so sustainable supply chain finance. And so that's really, really important to us that we've made that commitment. We have our energy and coal policies out there. So we talk about how we're going to move away from financing fossil fuels. It talks about how we're working already with our clients, the types of questions and conversations we have when we're sitting across from all of our clients about how they plan to transition. And then really excitingly, a lot of the innovation we plan to do. In order for the world to get to a 1.5 degree world, we need nature and we need climate tech. So we've made a $1 billion commitment to deploy that money specifically to venture debt for climate tech companies that the world desperately needs. And then lastly, and this is why we're here today, we can't do all of that at the expense of thinking about the communities that have been so unfairly impacted by income inequality as well as climate change impacts. So we are driving for a just and inclusive transition. We don't want to be just the bank that finances a net zero transition. We want to be the bank that finances a just and inclusive transition. And that requires all of you here today. I want to give a shout out to our incredible team that does our Community Reinvestment Act giving, Chris Lloyd and her team. They do such incredible work. And through them, I've had the privilege of working with some of the CDFIs and OFN and all these incredible organizations. So we believe that not only do we need to do that macro financing, the billions of dollars in investment and the relationships with the huge global companies, we need to work with all of you. We need to do the work on the ground so that the low and moderate income communities are brought along and are an active participant in this energy transition. So with that, I don't want to take any more time. I want to turn it over to the experts so we can hear more. I will come back later. So if we want to ask some questions about HSBC, I'm happy to do so. But again, thank you to all of you for being here. And thanks to our partners who created this incredible report.
No, well, thank you, Kelly, for that context. and also, again, for your support. It was necessary to create it. So good team. So Kelly described really the drivers behind this report, but just to put a finer point on them and give you more background on what has brought us to this point, why we created the guide, and why ultimately we're issuing this call to action or echoing this call to action throughout the community, are these, three main drivers. One, risks from climate change are growing. So 2023 was the hottest year on record. We're seeing increased losses from everything from hurricanes to floods to droughts and wildfires across the country. And again, these disproportionately impact low-income and disadvantaged communities, the exact communities that we're already working in. And the clean energy transition is coming as well, again, as Kelly described. So these communities can either be a part of that transition or they will get left behind without that targeted investment. And again, these community development lenders know those types of investments best. So the demand for our work has really never been higher and is only increasing. Second, we've got unprecedented federal support to address the climate crisis, with funds dedicated specifically to low-income and disadvantaged communities. So in particular, we expect a significant portion of that $27 billion greenhouse gas reduction fund to flow through community development lenders to those communities. And those funds will provide a mix of capital, subsidy, and support for capacity building. And that's going to have to filter out through many different organizations. So everyone needs to get ready. And finally, we've got these broader financial industry trends. So from changes to the Community Reinvestment Act to SEC disclosure rules and ESG goals and impact investor targets, that all will make clean energy and climate lending more attractive, but also necessary in some cases as we work with those co-investors. So all that said, let's take a look at what is in the report. It's time to jump in, and this guide describes all the players and strategies needed to expand community lending in support of climate solutions. So this guide is based on over 100 resources that support lending organizations in starting or increasing their commitment to combating climate change and/or environmental justice goals. And so we go over a description of the necessary preconditions for this work, the types of lenders that might do this work, how they would be capitalized, key market segments for those lenders to work in, what the greenhouse gas reduction process really looks like, and then specific strategies and investments that also have those co-benefits for low-income and disadvantaged communities in terms of like economic development, health and human safety, things like that. And so this guide is both a great introduction to climate lending as well as community development finance for green banks that already have that piece down or other external stakeholders that need an introduction to that field. So one more thing finally before I turn it over to my colleague Tina, I just want to quickly illustrate what a just and equitable energy transition looks like. So this is a list of guiding principles, and I see someone asked in the chat whether we will email the slides. We'll post the slides on our website, but you'll get a link to that. And so you'll have this list to refer back to, a list of guiding principles that make up an effective approach to green community lending. So that means that processes at all levels are consistent with EJ principles of self-determination, of a democratic and accountable process that ultimately promotes community accountability. We utilize existing capacity and infrastructure. We prioritize meaningful or real community engagement, and we address non-financial barriers. We provide terms that ensure that community serving projects are actually possible, and we maximize impact and we minimize risk across many different strategies. So all that said, I will turn it over to my colleague Tina to talk more about the meat of the guide.
Great. Thank you so much, Hannah. I think you can see that we're excited about this report, and we could spend all of our time talking about different things that were in the report. We're going to spare you that and get to our panelists, but the couple things that we wanted to just kind of highlight. We don't see this guide as being something that you're going to kind of curl up with a cup of cocoa and read from the beginning till the end. it's more a guide that we expect folks will sample. And as Hannah said, there will be pieces of it that many of you could have written just off the top of your head, but we're hoping that there will be pieces that are useful to you and your organization, no matter where you are on your journey, adventures in clean lending, the green economy, and the roadmap for the equitable transition. So Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, Inflation Reduction Act, that's really all about decarbonization, climate mitigation. We encourage you in this guide to think about the value proposition for your organization and for your borrowers and for their communities to push that further and to consider and incorporate financing for climate adaptation, resilience, and ultimately environmental justice as well. We know that many of you share the belief that equity and justice demand investment in an equitable transition to clean energy-based economy. Pragmatically, the individuals, households, communities with the deepest levels of carbon, the oldest cars, the dirtiest furnaces, are the ones that haven't been able to upgrade to even more recent fossil fuel equipment, cars, etc. So pragmatically, we need to reach these communities. But at the same time, it's these communities that have suffered with the highest rates of COVID and asthma. As I'm sure many of you know, the investments in energy efficiency for schools, for homes, for community centers, libraries, those things both get rid of greenhouse gas emissions, but they also reduce asthma, they reduce particulates in the air, etc. So we encourage you to think about what success looks like for you and for your organization, and to consider that while mitigation, decarbonization is essential, that it's not, in our view, sufficient. We hope that this will be useful to you, as I said, wherever you are on your journey. As you think about what success looks like, we encourage you to consider frameworks such as the social determinants of health, one that Locus adopted as a framework for their lending, pulling together the community development pieces, the environmental justice pieces, and the climate solutions pieces. It would take me a day and a half to go through all of the financing challenges and strategies that we talk about in our guide, and those only skim the surface. A couple things I wanted to just emphasize, though. We talk about in the guide what the necessary conditions are for a lender to be successful in financing a clean and just energy transition. These are all things that all of you, whether you're a lender from a green bank or a lender from a CDFI, community development credit union, these are things that you know. It's about robust and creditworthy pipeline, the capacity to underwrite and to understand the workforce, both in terms of the workforce on your own staffs, but also the workforce in terms of having capable contractors that can build or repair businesses and properties. And it's about community engagement, both for pipeline, but also for understanding what's needed in the community, what the priority should be. And then it's about the financing. While in this guide, we talk about green loan products and barriers to and particular challenges around clean energy and green finance. We wanted to remind you that even if you're a CDFI that has never done a green loan, has never financed solar, doesn't feel that they know a lot about energy efficiency, it's all lending. And as a lender, you understand that you are underwriting a business or a property. If we're talking about energy efficiency for a building, adaptation for a building, those are skills that you already have. Similarly, a community solar project is a business. There's a revenue stream, there's technology to be understood, warranties to be considered. So these are skills that as lenders, you already have. We're hoping that we've provided some tips, as well as Hannah said, links to many of the real leaders who have paved the way in this space. And then the final thing that we wanted to say is this is an opportunity with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the IRA, the infrastructure law. All of these things are an opportunity not just to develop new loan products and finance new types of energy businesses, although those are very important. It's also an opportunity to really think about the standards that you're applying to the properties that you're already invested in your portfolio or in your pipeline. And so in this report, we invite you to consider adopting standards and criteria that may be higher than what your building code requires. They may be passive house or some of the other standards, because it's, in the end, it's about impact for the borrowers. It's about impact for the communities, reducing asthma, reducing other different things from long time pollution, but it's also risk mitigation for you as a lender. So we're excited about the guide. Hope it'll be useful. And I'm going to turn it over to Curtis to talk more about digging into some of the details. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks a lot, Tina. So in this report, we all want to cover quite a few things, maybe too many things, but we had a fun time doing it. One of the things that we wanted to cover was opportunities that we as a community and as an industry can pursue to help facilitate this just and equitable transition. The first, and we talk about these in depth in the report, these are just the headings of the various topics. One is creating more standardized lending and underwriting approaches. Right now, one green bank's lending products don't look the same as another green bank's lending products, for example. That is not the recipe to scale. Second is having a diverse base of capital providers. We need global banks like HSBC. We need credit unions. We need CDFIs. We need green banks. We need many others. Each of us brings different strengths to the table, and we all need to be part of this. Third is low cost and easily accessible independent sources of technical assistance. It's not just about the money. We can design the best loan products in the world, but if a community doesn't know how to access the community solar market or to pursue energy efficiency incentives, the investment doesn't happen. We need a flexible range of products. This is a little bit, counter to the first point, which is standardized lending approaches, but we can still have standardized approach within a number of products that meet the needs of the community where they are. We need guidelines around impact measurement if we're going to make good decisions about how to invest this capital. How do we look at different types of social impact, the social determinants of health, for example, as Tina spoke about earlier. Seventh point is increased scale of lending intermediaries supporting a just and equitable energy transition. There's a pretty big gap between the large global banks and most of the CDFIs, credit unions, and green banks that are doing this work. We need to be able to work across the ecosystem and really build that ecosystem. We hope that the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is a key catalyst in that. And then finally, initiatives to increase lender collaboration. Collaboration is something that each of us as authors believe very strongly in as a guiding principle. And on the next slide, you'll see a little bit more detail on that. So this is not to suggest these are the only initiatives to increase lender collaboration, but we wanted to put down some of them because in discussions with stakeholders, it's good to have the menu. What can we do? What should we be considering in our business plans? What should we be advocating for when we're talking to policymakers? So various strategies, and many of the folks that are on the call now, I saw, IPC on the call, New York Green Bank, Locus, obviously one of our co-presenters, are mentioned in here, and we have links to at least one example for each of these within the body of the report. I'll summarize them briefly. The first is deal-by-deal leverage of capital and capacity. This is the easiest way to put a toe in the market. Through loan sales, assignments, or participations, lenders can benefit from folks already in the market and start to have exposure to this sector and understand the underwriting and performance of this sector. Program and product partnerships. For example, a lender and an ESCO partnering could be many forms of this. Platform strategies, making a product available to a contractor network, for example, putting it out there and having basically a joint origination strategy. Collaborative fund strategies, I sort of think of this as kind of the lending tree of green finance. How do we put together funds and different pools of capital with borrowers and their different needs? Public-private partnerships have been discussed at length in many reports. We wanted to get that on the table. There are many examples in green lending. Intermediation strategies. If you can't fund the end user of the clean energy or energy efficiency, fund one of the lenders that's doing this work. It's a great strategy to put money to work at scale, and particularly for larger financial institutions. Secondary market strategies, you don't have to originate. You can acquire loans in the secondary market. In order for this market to become vibrant and large and scale, we need to have a vibrant secondary market. And then finally, credit enhancement strategies. For example, provision of loan guarantees. That's another way to help facilitate this transition for people willing to absorb the credit risk, but maybe without the same loan underwriting capabilities. So with that, I just want to briefly thank everybody for coming today. And as one of the co-authors of the report, had a really fun time doing this. I just want to give huge kudos to UNH, Carsey School Center for Impact Finance, just a wonderful partner to collaborate with on this. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Amir to hear more from a leading practitioner on this.
Thank you, Curtis. Appreciate it. And thank you to all the folks at the Carsey Center for having Locus on today's presentation. Just to go briefly, Locus's mission is to create access to capital by developing community partnerships and innovative tools to tackle systemic challenges and advance promising opportunities. To achieve that goal or that mission, we completed a strategic plan in 2023 that was really based on 6 individual goals. First is to coordinate and operate as one organization. The second one was to work in new ways with place-based investment opportunities. The third was to make lending and fund management practices more equitable. Fourth is measure and evaluate and report on impact. The fifth was to ensure all products and services are financially sustainable. And then finally, the sixth is to continue to build a diverse and inclusive workplace culture. I mentioned these 6 because they're really the backbone of our approach to fair and just and equitable financing and how we hope to sort of have an impact in the communities of society, the communities where we work. And these goals that I mentioned, we meet them through 4 specific areas. One is affordable housing. The second is small business lending. Third is healthy food access. And finally, under a broad umbrella, is climate finance. When I think about what does it mean to have a just and equitable energy transition, and I work at Locus, each of these 4 areas of financing are ultimately interrelated. There's no affordable housing solution that does not take into account ways to address energy efficiency when we approach our work. The quality of healthy food access for us starts with agricultural practices. Are they regenerative or are they eroding for society? So we have to think about things in an integrated way, and that's been part of the approach that we've taken at Locus. I did want to focus on 2 specific goals, which really address the issue of just and equitable transition. The first is the goal to work in new ways in place-based investment opportunities. At Locus, we recognize that while changes may be universal, to have equitable solutions inevitably involves some direct engagement with communities. So our framework begins with our focus on place, whether that place is regional, city, or neighborhood. And we're guided by a few principles that we developed in thinking about place. The first is that we would engage communities where our guidance is welcome. The idea is not to be transactional, but to be engaging. The second is working in communities where the capital system is not working for all. The third is that we have a more pressing community identified opportunities. We would be embedded in working with embedded community-based organizations and a focus on being catalytic, and then finally to be equitable, inclusive. And our belief is if we hold to these principles, We'll be less transactional in how we show up and more of a partner in our focus. The second goal that I wanted to really focus on was that of measuring, evaluating, and reporting on impact. Uh, Locus has shifted the way we operate very significantly to say that we are going to operate going forward off of a theory of change approach that is designed to speak to the desired outcomes of the community where we serve. And it's going to be grounded in racial equity and social determinants of health framework. I think Hannah had mentioned that early on that we had shifted to the social determinant of health framework. Our hope in doing that is that we can incorporate more robust metrics, kind of moving beyond sort of the traditional outputs and widgets that we have been long-term utilizing in the community development space, but shift to really driving more impact-based metrics. Again, that's why we start with the theory of change. That's why we start with place, so that those metrics are really grounded in information we're learning along the way. And so then again, from there, it's really thinking about moving from a reporting and compliance perspective to a more driven impact management and measurement approach. And the idea is that it drives decision making, product design, and program evaluation. So if we want to do financing that actually does have some transition associated with it, that has to feed its way into our decision making. It has to feed its way into like what loans are we doing and what products we're designing. And then we have to ground ourselves in a real evaluation framework that can be implemented from the beginning of a financing transaction and then carry itself through the life of an engagement with the community. So again, our focus and why we think the framework that was pulled together by the Carsey Institute is really important is because it gives a really great wealth of detail of thinking about how even in our model we can sort of advance our work as a community development organization and do so with some real fidelity to our commitment to community, so that again these ideas of justness and idea of equity is really built in from the start when we do our work. So just a little bit about us at Locus. Hopefully it's helpful in understanding why we see the value of this framework as developed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amir. This webinar kind of brings to an end what feels like an era of creating this guide. And we are just as excited as our attendees to hear your thoughts and your insights. Thank you so much. And we'll hear from Netta next.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for this webinar and this great paper. It's a pleasure to be here. So picking up on what Amir just laid out, we've really benefited from the approach that Locus has taken. Inclusive has been working in the space of green lending for community lenders for many years. We started with a really important partnership with the University of New Hampshire with the Carsey School in 2020. We were able to work together to jointly launch a solar and green lending training and technical assistance program. UNH secured amazing support and funding from the Department of Energy, Solar Energy Technologies Office. And since then, since 2020, we've trained over 700 community-based lenders from close to 400 financial institutions in how to develop green loan products. And I know we put the link in the chat earlier, but I'm just gonna pop it in again. We have courses running all the time. We've had amazing, generous grant support, and so there have not been costs for the lenders to date. We encourage everyone who's interested in launching or growing a green loan program at your community-based lending institution to apply. And we've seen just tremendous success from the lenders that have participated in green lending and participated in this program. We've had in the training, we've had credit unions, including minority depository institutions, CDFI credit unions, low-income designated credit unions. We've had CDFI loan funds. We've had green banks, we've had community banks, and a range of other mission-driven, very community-centered lending institutions. So I see on the call today many alums from our training program. So great to see familiar names and faces. And you know, the reason this program started links very closely to the reason that we're here today, this practitioner's guide. We realized years ago that for a just and equitable energy transition, community lenders have to be part of the solution. They already know how to lend in this space, as was said earlier in the call. They understand their borrowers. They've spent years building, if not decades, building trusted relationships with their borrowers. And they know how to create affordable and accessible loan products. So we thought with that lending expertise, it would be not a very large leap to understand clean energy, energy efficiency, and kind of green products and how to do financing for those products. So we've seen, like I said, 700 community lenders, 400 financial institutions. And since Inclusive is a membership organization that primarily supports community development credit unions, I had pulled kind of the lending stats for the credit unions just for this conversation. So we've seen 338 credit unions that have green loan programs. And we have received a lot of really valuable, interesting data from those, but I just pulled 30 of the credit unions that had reported their green projects, their green investments over the past 3 years have invested about $1 billion. And what they've told us is, so this is kind of the pitch for as important as it is for green lender or for community lenders to get involved in this space. It's also very beneficial for the lending institutions we've seen. We've seen this, opportunity to offer a new loan product, diversify the loan portfolio, build a new customer or borrower base, build a lot of goodwill in the community, help to strengthen the communities that you're already investing in. And then the borrowers have been benefiting because they have the opportunity to have access to projects that help them to save money, to lower their energy use, and kind of sort of future-proof their energy use as well. And of course, this can lower their energy burden, which for low-income households in the US, their energy cost burden is 3 times higher than non-low-income households. Also for Black households, it's 43% more than white households. For Hispanic households, it's 20% more. And for Native American households, it's 45% more. So I think when we're thinking about equitable transition, providing affordable clean energy projects can help to lower that energy cost burden, and that can have such a significant impact on the household budget and free up money for many other critical costs. But also, we've talked about this in this conversation today. There are social determinants of health here. So energy cost burden is also correlated with greater risk of respiratory diseases, increased stress and economic hardship, difficulty moving in and out of poverty, moving out of poverty. And so again, this is not only critically important, but I think that community lenders are uniquely positioned to operate in this. So one of the things that was really highlighted today in the conversation and in the guide is that in order to operate in this space, community lenders can really be building partnerships and helping to support each other to advance in this space. So one piece of our technical assistance program is that we have a large alumni network and we help bring community lenders together to learn from each other. A lot of the technical assistance is actually different community lenders teaching each other what they've learned so that others can move into the space more quickly. We've also seen, like I said, when I started talking, benefits of very specific benefits of programs like what Amir had laid out from Locus. So Inclusive and another nonprofit organization, Inclusive Prosperity Capital, and I refer to them as that because they're related but separate. They're partnered but separate nonprofits. We've worked together on this amazing program that IPC operates called Smart E, and we've received a loan guarantee, community investment guarantee program through Locust. So they've been through one of the products that they've developed, or one of the programs that they've developed, they've enabled Inclusive and IPC to offer the Smart E green loan, and through that we partner with a whole range of community lenders. The program right now, that specific program right now, is being piloted in the Southwest, in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. But IPC has been operating that program in other places, and the program is also expanding. So I'll put the link in the chat for that in a moment. So I think with that, I will pause and pass it back over, but just partnerships and community lenders absolutely should be here are the key points that I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Netta, for really illustrating, giving life to the need and the opportunity and what collaboration looks like. Emily, you're up.
Wonderful. Thank you all for bringing us here to have this conversation today and for putting together this amazing resource. I wasn't quite curled up with a cup of hot cocoa, but I did read it cover to cover on my flight and really felt that this guide, I mean, it really captures the landscape and is an incredible foundational resource for any group that's looking to join the fight against climate change. So really, thank you all for the work that went into preparing this report. I want to just give a little bit of background on Opportunity Finance Network. We appreciated the reference in the report, and I can just share a little more color about the role that we've played within the broader CDFI industry in our nearly 40-year history. We really see the organization having three roles: a trade association, membership organization, and a financial institution. As a trade association, we advocate at the federal level for policies and funding that support CDFIs. That, of course, most recently included the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and we're really incredibly pleased that a portion of those funds are dedicated to community lenders that can do the work that Netta was just describing, and that Amir's group is on the ground doing, really connecting funds to communities that are most impacted by the impacts of climate change. As a trade association, we also provide capacity building support, and I'll share a little bit more about what we're doing on the climate front for anyone looking to get involved. As a membership organization, we have over 400, I think it's 405 at this point, members. We do represent the full CDFI industry, but we tend to have mostly loan funds in our membership. I saw a very specific number for loan funds referenced in the report, and our membership comprises about 70% of all loan funds, which is fantastic. And loan funds are lending into a number of different asset classes, primarily real estate, but also community centers, some consumer retail work as well. I would also share that OFN a few years ago took a strategic decision to redesign our membership and the approach that we have to the industry to reach and serve smaller CDFIs. And we have really seen an increase in the number of smaller loan funds that have joined OFN and are receiving the benefits. So it really has helped deepen the reach of the work that we're doing across the country and into the communities that might be harder to reach. And then lastly, as a financial institution, we provide loans and grants to OFN members. We currently have 163 borrowers, and we've raised more than $450 million in capital since March 2020. And I will talk a little bit about how that's going to support the work that we're doing on climate lending, but that's just been an incredibly effective tool for helping CDFIs across the country capitalize and serve their communities with the very accessible loan products that we've been talking about here. As an organization, OFN, we are on our own climate journey. As Hannah referenced at the top of the call, we really do see climate justice as economic justice. The two are very much intertwined. They're one and the same, and we do not see it as scope creep. We have supported climate lending within the OFN membership network for some time, but we are becoming more intentional about that, particularly in recent years, and building it into the work that I just mentioned, where we're capitalizing, we're building capacity, we're advocating, and we're really seeing climate, as a cross-cutting issue in all of those different areas in that work. And we also, of course, now have a dedicated team to, moving this forward, just, finalizing our strategy and, working across departments to really take a comprehensive approach to how we can support OFN members and the industry more broadly in deepening their climate lending. We did also issue last fall at our annual conference a call to action to the entire CDFI industry for all community lenders to provide climate financing by 2028. Not only, for all of the reasons that we've described, every community across the country and really in the world, we need access to the climate solutions because we're feeling the impacts of climate change on a community basis, at the community level. And we also see this call to action being in alignment with the consensus that's been reached by the global scientific community around, the 2030 and the time frame in which we really need to see significant emissions reductions. So we're looking at it at the large scale, with all of the partners and, the large banks that we work with, but also really want to make sure that communities are receiving the impact or the benefit of that work as well. Very quickly, OFN members on their climate journeys, it's across the spectrum. We have a number that are very advanced and are really, have understood how to, move products and reach communities and, access secondary markets. And we have about 45% of our members who haven't done any climate lending. And that's where I see this report being incredibly beneficial and in alignment with the strategy that we have to bring more community lenders into the climate lending space. So we are, to achieve that call to action that I mentioned, we're really focused on getting OFN members and the CDFI industry to take that first step into climate lending if they haven't already. So learning, capitalization, and collaboration are really the ways that we see this work happening. On learning, we have reached 130 institutions with our climate training. We do have a training coming up next week in DC for anyone who happens to be available, as well as a virtual training. The curriculum focuses primarily on commercial solar, but also provides an introduction to terminology for people to understand when we say decarbonization, what do we mean? So there's a lot of opportunity to get a foundation there. We are actively passing through funding to CDFIs to initiate or deepen their climate lending as well. We had some loan and grant packages that were finalized and announced last year, $8.5 million to 6 CDFIs doing climate lending in their communities. And we also just recently closed a call for applications that prioritized climate loans, particularly for groups that have never received funding from OFN before. So we're really trying to take an intentional approach to opening that door and bringing others along and to start their climate lending journey. I'd also just like to wrap up by mentioning a few different ways that we're kind of creating a platform for collaboration across the industry, regardless of OFN membership status. So our annual conference brings together over 2,000 attendees. And what I found to be most fascinating about my first conference experience last year is how you really see in these sessions that are proposed from the industry, the opportunities to collaborate across the board. And one of my favorite panels was a conversation between philanthropy, a solar developer, and a CDFI talking about the ways that they work together to bring very effective climate solutions to their communities. And so there's this platform to connect with others, to network, and also to share about the work and really start to kick off some of those peer-to-peer learning conversations that Netta referenced. We also offer CDFI Connect, which is a network of over 15,000 people, so well beyond the OFN membership. And I'm in Portland right now, and it was referenced yesterday unprompted in our regional meeting as a really valuable tool. Someone admitted to lurking on the platform, never having contributed, but had very much appreciated the information that was flowing across. And so it is an open platform. If you are interested, please feel free to join and contribute. We would very much welcome your contributions and also invite you to connect with others. And then lastly, I think I saw Jen on the call. I wanted to just compliment the CDFI Climate Crisis Working Group. That is a really, it's an example of a practitioner-led galvanizing strategy that has forged connections and provided great content. OFN, we provide logistical support for this conversation that happens monthly, and it's been going on for a number of years, and it's really a really incredibly effective way to start to learn and get involved and understand who's acting where, what vendors are out there, what's the state of the conversation, so that, again, everybody can be working towards providing climate solutions in their communities. So I think that kind of wraps it up for me. I know we'll see a lot more collaboration as GGRF awards are announced any moment now. So we're all on pins and needles, but really appreciate this conversation and all the work that the industry is doing to bring climate lending to the communities that most need them.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, for that look at the industry and for noting all those entry points for folks. Hopefully everyone is seeing themselves somewhere in the journey now and are feeling emboldened to dive in or dive deeper. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to your questions. While you all are chatting those questions or figuring out how to raise your hands, I'll first ask our panelists if they have any questions for each other.
I have a question for Amir. Amir, I know that you spoke about the framework and the approach that you have. What advice would you give to a CDFI that has not yet started on their climate lending journey? How would you encourage them to think about taking that first step?
I would probably point to two things. One is educational and one is risk related. On the educational one, it probably would be spending time with the work that's been done by Carsey Institute, attending OFN trainings, getting a bigger, getting the bigger landscape and understanding. Because underneath it, then is the risk question. It's like, what are you doing a transaction? Is it housing? Is it pure sort of green improvement? Is it, a small business, activity? So I always start with getting the framework of understanding the incremental change that we're trying to achieve here in climate finance. And then when it comes to the risk, the first thing I would do is try to find somebody who's done it before and participate with them on a financing activity. And that's going to become increasingly important because, as you mentioned, Emily, any moment from now, hopefully like shorter moments than longer moments, we'll be knowing about the future of financing for our sector with climate. And there will probably be initially more capital than there is certain deal flow out there. So the opportunity to partner with folks who have experience will probably be the best starting point.
Thank you. Any other questions amongst our panelists? Anyone want to jump in?
I had a question for Curtis.
Yeah.
Can I ask Curtis? Okay. Curtis, so, we've spoken about this before often, and it kind of ties into what Amir and Emily were just chatting about. So we've seen a lot of lenders that want to get involved in this space might need some extra support, and I guess I would call it a little bit of like a safe space to explore. What recommendations do you have for a lender, or maybe what expectations should a new lender in this space have? Do you think they can hit the ground running? Do you think they should expect to make some mistakes in the beginning? Do you think they should call you and ask questions?
Yeah, I think honestly, all of the above. I don't know too many things in life that are challenging and worth doing where you don't make some mistakes along the way. So I think expectation management is part of it. We are working with newer technologies, with newer borrowers. We are trying to provide large additionality. When we're financing a community solar project paired with storage or modular approach to affordable zero net energy housing, we can't look at the last 30 loans that were done. There haven't been 30 loans done, nowhere. So you need to have reasonable expectations, but through some of the strategies that we talked about in the report, there's a way to put a toe in the water, maybe become a guarantor, partially guarantee some, participate in some loans, originated by, folks like NYSEG or any of the other lenders on this call, Locus, IPC, New York Green Bank. There are lots of ways to start this process. It takes a while to educate credit committees and loan officers and the infrastructure on what this takes, but the opportunities are there. And certainly, yeah, I mean, you mentioned, should they call you? Yes, please call me. Call any of us in the community. The only way this is going to work to have a just and equitable transition is if we all collaborate.
Great, thank you all.
I think back to you.
Yeah, we do have a question in the chat. How can a nonprofit affordable housing developer in the Midwest best get funding for home rehab work to make it green? It seems like there's one set of funders for housing and a separate set for the solar renewable space. We also had another chat for Netta that was private around, how many of those community credit union offerings are around solar products versus others. So maybe we can combine those questions and talk about just briefly, they're coming up on time. Where does this funding come from and how is it sort of bucketed?
Okay, so for the 338, we see, primarily credit unions have strong consumer lending and small business lending. So most of their loan products are unsecured consumer loans or small business loans. And they tend to finance solar plus storage, home and small business energy retrofits, electrification, electric vehicles, and then sometimes resiliency, fireproof building materials, water conservation, and then often, hopefully, people are working towards all of the above over time. And then I think for where to get the financing, I'll say one quick thing, and then I certainly want others to jump in. But I see that a lot of the entities that we work with, they reach out to utilities, they reach out to local government, they try to figure out if there are any pools of dollars available that, like, say, their city or county needs to use up, and they're doing a lot of creative outreach to raise funds for their green loan products.
Yeah, thanks, Netta. And Tina points us to the lender capitalization section of the report, which is super. So, we're almost to the top of the hour. I'm going to run through our panelists one last time for final thoughts and maybe a focus on what they're most feeling excited about and where our industry is going in this space. And while we do that, I'm going to provide our contact information on the screen as well. So let's start with Kelly and go to Amir, Netta, and Emily.
No, I'll cede my time to the others.
I'm just most excited that this is actually a community approach where there's real collaboration, not bifurcation between folks who are focused on green and folks who are focused on community. So that's the most exciting thing to me.
Completely agree with Amir, and I think just to be really repetitive, you don't have to do it by yourself. Reach out to others in the space, help each other. It's really amazing things have been happening when people have been collaborating in this space.
I echo all of that and would also share that something that I feel very excited about is the momentum and the deep partnerships that we're seeing across the financing ecosystem, from larger banks all the way to the smaller CDFIs and credit unions, really reaching deep into communities to bring accessible and affordable financial products. It's just, it feels like an incredible moment to be a part of this movement.
All right, thank you all, Amir, Netta, Emily, for participating today. For Kelly and HSBC for their support of the report, to Tina and Curtis for being my partners on this. And with that, we'll let you get on to the next thing, which is like building out a new loan product, right? So let us know what kind of help you need, dive into the report, watch our recording back, and please share it with others. So thank you so much for being here.